Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Deborah Garlick from Henpicked. I'm joined by my colleague Sally Leach from Henpicked Menopause in the Workplace. And I'm also joined by Nigel Denby, who is an award-winning registered dietitian. And the reason we've set up this session today is because this is such a hugely popular subject. In fact, I think we achieved record sign-ups for this session today, and I'm not surprised because I really want to know what's going on. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today, Nigel.
I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's terrific.
Well, I know we're going to get a lot of questions, Nigel, so I'm going to start with that question I think is on all of our minds. Menopause and weight gain. Is it inevitable?
I wouldn't say it's inevitable, but there is a kind of a perfect storm going on around perimenopause and menopause that means around about 50% of women will gain somewhere in the region of 1.5 kilos for each year of their perimenopause. And over the whole of that perimenopause, the average weight gain is around about 10 kilos. Well, that's getting on a good 1.5 stones, easily a dress size. But is it absolutely inevitable? No, we don't see it in every single woman, but my goodness, there is a very, very strong trend. Absolutely.
Did you hear my gasp there?
It really is very noticeable. And what I think for an awful lot of women is despite the fact that of all the range of symptoms that can be going on with menopause, many of those hidden and something that, you know, very often women don't tend to talk about because they're trying to cope and to manage through this. The weight gain is by far probably one of the most distressing elements of perimenopause and menopause, but we're going to cover today what you can do about it, which is good.
Absolutely. Yes, for me, when you said 1.5 stones, that's when I gasped.
But
then again, you did preface that by saying around about half of women. So clearly it's not at all. Clearly, or hopefully, I'm going to hear or ask you, why is it going on? Why is it happening?
Well, let's understand that, because this is fundamental to then working out what you're going to do about it. The one thing I want you to get right now is if you're somebody who has kind of kept it on an even keel in your 30s and early 40s, and you might have lost a bit here, gained a bit there, and you've kind of found the method that works, you're going to have to rethink that, because your body is changing, and those old methods of maybe sort of slightly quick fixing it are not going to work in this menopausal body. So yeah. Let's go on. I was going to say, let's just understand the perfect storm that's going on to create this weight gain for some women.
And you're right, because we have changed. I mean, there was a time when I could think to myself, well, you know, I'm coming up from my holiday, I will be wanting my bikini body, or, you know, feeling really comfortable in my clothes. And I'd sort of go on some sort of crazy restricting my calories for a period of time. You know, it was off like that. Whereas when we were talking earlier, I was saying to you, I could not believe how much had snuck on without me noticing during COVID.
Yes.
When it then came to me thinking about I'm going to get this off, it was kind of a lot harder than I was expecting it to be. And, you know, I just readjusted my diet, but it took a lot longer than I'm getting ready for holiday, I just need to get some weight off.
Well, and absolutely. And there are several reasons that are leading to the weight gain in the first place, and why it becomes so persistent and difficult to get rid of. The first thing really is hormones, and your estrogen levels are falling. That's what perimenopause is, as your estrogen levels begin to reduce. Now, estrogen was giving and has been giving you your shape. It gives you the female shape, that nipped in waist. Even if people have been on the heavy side, you will have a slightly nipped in waist, and that's because of estrogen. that begins to change, and you start becoming much more sort of straight up and down. You find the weight gain goes on around the trunk, often on the back. People will talk about their bras not fitting in the way they used to, blouses, jackets, dresses, everything essentially not fitting in the same way that it used to. So hormones are changing the way your body lays down fat, but your metabolic rate is the thing that's really having the impact on your likelihood to gain fat. Your metabolism is controlled largely by the amount of lean muscle tissue that your body contains, as opposed to fat tissue. The normal process of aging for men and women, it starts around 35, where we start losing muscle tissue. That causes the body to, the metabolic rate to slow down, and we need slightly fewer calories. As women begin to lose estrogen, the rate at which that muscle tissue is lost speeds up a little. And that has a significant impact on the number of calories you need each day. So you may find over the course of your perimenopause, your calorie requirements reduce by at least 200 calories a day. Now, that's not a huge amount. That's a 2-finger Kit Kat, couple of bits of toast. But the reality is that the cumulative effect of that reduced calorie requirement has quite an impact over a week, a month, a year, and you begin to see this weight gain increase. Other things are going on as well. Some women will find that their diet and their activity levels change because of menopausal symptoms. If you're feeling absolutely wretched, you're unlikely to want to go and do some of the exercise you might have done before. You may also find that you eat, maybe you drink a bit more alcohol because you're feeling rotten. On the other hand, you might start feeling a whole lot better once you get on top of your treatments, your symptoms, and that might mean that you start going back out again, enjoying life, really, bringing on the party season. And that, of course, can also bring extra calories with it as well. So there are hormonal, physiological, and social reasons why this happens.
Well, thank you for summarising that, because that was just the question I was going to ask you. So from when you talk about the perfect storm, it's not just the weight, it's the shape.
Oh, absolutely. You will find that the weight you're gaining at perimenopause is very different from weight you might have gained before. And I mentioned many times, many women who have struggled with their weight all their lives will really start to notice that it becomes more persistent. And as I say, the tried and tested methods they've used in their younger years are not working for them. But it's equally upsetting for a woman who has never had to think about her weight before, suddenly finding this is becoming an intrinsic part of perimenopause. So I think, if regardless of the quantity of weight, it's this shape change that so many women find so upsetting, and I completely get it.
Absolutely. So I'm hoping now, Nigel, you're going to give me some hope.
Of course. Of course,
we can't change the aging process, and who really wants to? That's life, isn't it? And what's the alternative anyway? But what could we do? What could somebody do if this is them right now?
Well,
perhaps started to see the build up, maybe even failed to reduce it in the same way that they did previously. So what could we do?
I think really, Deborah, the way I always start with this is I've been working and specialising in menopause for 25 years. I promise you, I have never worked with anyone who can't address this. But there are some fundamentals. I think, first of all, you got to wake up and smell the coffee, that is what is going on. This is part of perimenopause. If you don't do that and you just keep on doing what you always did to control your weight, you're going to keep yourself just in a cycle of utter misery. So you've got to stop that, and you've got to think, right, this is a new phase. I need to address this in a new way. And the first thing I always start with is a really honest food and activity diary for at least 3 or 4 days. And in that, you want to look at the timings when you eat, whether there are large gaps between meals. If there are, that really needs to be addressed. We need to start looking at regular eating throughout the day. Of course, we need to look at what you're eating and the quantities. And we also need to see, is there any kind of emotional link with what you're eating? So I often ask people to think about how you're feeling. Are you stressed? Are you bored? Are you lonely? Are you tired? Are you feeling rotten? Are you anxious? But also, we've got to look at your activity levels. And we start with thinking about your baseline functional activity, the number of steps basically that you do each day. And you can record those on a smartphone if you've got an Apple Watch or something like that. These will all be really useful. The thing that is absolutely non-negotiable in controlling menopause weight gain, though, is strength exercise. Now, that doesn't mean you've got to go to the gym, but you have got to start doing some resistance strength exercise, which could be things like Pilates. You might use band resistance, even in yoga, or you might just start doing some really simple strength exercise at home that you can use, which start looking at exercising the big muscle groups, your chest, your back, your core, your buttocks, and your quads. Now, that combination, if we can start to achieve a calorie deficit, maybe about 300 calories a day, and I'll explain to you the ways to look at doing that, along with an increase in steps. You don't have to start running marathons. You just really want to get your steps up by 2,000 or 3,000 a day, plus the inclusion of some regular strength exercise. And that is the basic template to control menopause weight gain. It works, it takes a little time, but it's safe, it's maintainable, and it becomes personalized for you.
Oh, that's setting new habits, isn't it, as well? Because
this is behavior change. This is recognizing that your body is moving into a new phase, and what you might have got away with previously isn't going to work anymore. So it is absolutely setting new habits. I often work with people over, say, a 12-week period, where, because that's the amount of time we know it takes to start instilling new habits. So this is absolutely not the time for quick fixes and fads, because amongst all of this, we have got to also look after your bones, your heart. Your body needs nutrition, and you can't go cutting out food groups or going for long periods without eating. Your body needs nourishment.
I was going to ask you that, Nigel, because when we talked before, I know I put weight on during COVID, and it was a little bit of a wake-up call, a bit of a shock for me. But actually, and it took me a year to get it off. But then again, the thing I was thinking about doing is, all right, I'll do keto, I'll do this, I'll do 1,000 a night day, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. But I know that just leads me to misery, if I'm being blunt, and I'm not very good at it anyway, and I don't think it stays off. So it took me much longer, and the good news is that a year later I've kept it off. But it is one of the, you can understand why sometimes let me give you a boost to this. If I can just lose half a stone, if I can just lose that, it will encourage me to go. And you're saying actually not a time for unusual diet
fixes, fads, and gimmicks. No, absolutely, and there are good reasons outside of just your whole nutritional needs as well, Deborah. I mentioned there that part of the reason this is happening for you is the fact that you're losing lean muscle tissue. Very often, if you leap into a quick fix, faddy, gimmicky type diet, you are going to lose weight rapidly, but often you will lose muscle as well as fat. And ultimately, that is slowing your metabolic rate down even further. As you get further into that quick fix diet and you find you can't maintain it long term, you go back to what you were doing before, you gain even more weight than you lost in the first place. The idea of, I mean, this is the beauty. And this is, if you have been a slave to losing half a stone, gaining half a stone all your life, this is a moment when you can actually break free of that. And you can now embrace a lifestyle plan that is going to be lifelong. It's one of the gifts of menopause. I mean, I just adore working with menopausal women because there is something about this time which allows you to restock, take a new look on how you want your life to be. And I absolutely promise you, if you want to get off that awful, wretched diet treadmill, this is the time you can do it. Now, again, some really simple ways that you can do this. I mentioned it, eating regularly. A breakfast, a snack, a lunch, a snack, a dinner means that you can really control your appetite, that you can go into meals feeling hungry, not ravenous, and eat until you're satisfied, not stuffed. Couple of quick tips for people. When you're looking at your plate, imagine you're dividing it into 4 quarters. 1 quarter carbohydrate. Yes, you must eat carbohydrate. 1 quarter protein, and half your plate filled with vegetables, salad, or fruit. That will always keep the balance of your food groups right. Once you've done that, look at your plate, the whole plate of food, and imagine if that would fit into your cupped hands. That's a good portion to start with. Eat that amount slowly, mindfully. Don't race through your food. Try to eat without devices. There's a really good reason for this. We want you to recognize when you're satisfied. That's a slightly delayed reaction, in the same way that thirst is a delayed reaction to being dehydrated. So if you slow down and you eat really consciously, when you've eaten that amount, stop and just check with yourself, do I still feel hungry? That's a really different feeling from thinking that was really tasty and I'd like some more. This is, am I still hungry? If you are, you must go back and have a little more. But if not, that's the end of eating. And we're only looking to save about 300 calories a day. So if you reduce that portion size, if you balance those food groups more appropriately, if you stop grazing, unconscious grazing on foods that are usually sugary and fatty, like crisps and confectionery, but actually plan in nutrient-dense snacks. And of course, another issue to look at is also booze. We know that perimenopausal women are one of the groups within society that we're seeing higher intakes of alcohol. If you save one or two, if you are someone who likes to have a couple of glasses of wine with dinner, and you save those by having a few alcohol-free days or reduce the quantity, those are the sorts of things that over time, combined with more steps and more strength exercise, will absolutely get the weight off this time, but also keep it off into the decades ahead of you.
That's fantastic, Nigel. And I have to say that very, very sensible, and appreciating it over a long time, but then, we can do something about it and set these new habits. I hadn't appreciated the link before around metabolism and keeping your muscles strong because they burn more calories.
Well, and it's an insurance for the future. Again, I want women to stop at this point and kind of think, what type of 85-year-old do I want to be? Do I want to be the woman who can still decorate her own dining room? Or am I going to be satisfied with sitting in the corner of a nursing home, hoping someone might take me for a wee? Because the reality is, some of the things you choose to do now, the lifestyle decisions you make now, will have a huge impact on your health, your fitness, and your strength in the decades ahead of you. You know, we are all expected to live well into our 80s and 90s now. That's great, but let's think about the quality of those years. And it's now that you do the foundations. It's our 40s and our 50s are almost some of the last chances we've really got as human beings to undo some of the dirty aspects of our lives that we've lived. And as you say, change behavior, not dramatically, just clean things up a little bit. And the art of finding this new lifestyle to take you into the decades ahead of you, it is not about being perfect. It's just about being a bit better. And first of all, you've got to uncover, so what is it that needs to change? That's where the food and activity diary really comes into it.
That's where it all starts. Sally, I think there's lots of questions. So thank you, Nigel. I'll just check in with see what questions people have.
Yeah, there are lots of questions, but also I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much for sharing. So many people have shared their success stories, very much sharing what you've been sharing there, Nigel, around the things that they've done that have made a difference, are the things you're talking about, and kind of giving that reassurance that actually, if we do make those changes, and the success stories, and really well done to everyone who has made those changes and is sharing those, because it's really appreciated, because it does give us all that bit of hope that we can make a difference to this. So we've got a couple of things to come through. One was around HRT. So I know we often get asked, does HRT make you gain weight? But some people were also saying, if HRT is replacing that estrogen, is that actually supportive of managing the shape and the weight gain issues of losing estrogen? So just getting your thoughts around that first.
Really good questions. And let's look at both of those. So in terms of HRT causing weight gain, there is a mountain of evidence that we look at, which has always shown us that the link, the direct link, just isn't there. So we can say the evidence tells us HRT does not directly cause weight gain. However, I think it's any menopause doctor will tell you, and I certainly see from experience, there are some women for whom they go on HRT and weight gain comes along at the same time. There can be multiple reasons for that. And there is certainly one or two elements of HRT. So some women will find things like progesterone can cause them to feel a bit puffy, a bit fluid retentive. Now, of course, that's not fat gain, but it certainly, you know, can feel like that. Generally speaking, if you start on HRT and you do gain some weight at that point, usually that will settle after a few months, a bit like some women might remember, if you start the contraceptive pill, you might gain a little bit to begin with, and then that settles down. But in terms of, is HRT the cause? Again, that evidence is saying, no, it isn't. In terms of, if you take HRT, why doesn't that just put everything back? You got to remember, HRT, the estrogen in your HRT is giving you just enough to take the edge off your symptoms. It's not giving you the level of estrogen that you would have had to become fertile again. Think of it this way. It's a little bit like your car starts running out of petrol and you've got a little jerry can in the boot that you top it up to get you to the next petrol station. That's what HRT is. It's like your jerry can. So it's not enough to reverse the way that your body starts laying down fat. The only thing that really is reversible is this loss in muscle tissue. You lose muscle when you don't use it or when you age, but you can gain new muscle when you introduce regular, and the key is regular, strength exercise. 1 or 2 crazy weight sessions at the gym is much less effective than doing 10, 15 minutes of gentle strength exercise 4 or 5 times a week.
Fantastic, excellent. And a lot of people have talked about managing kind of cravings of, you know, when, especially if you're not feeling great, and you know, especially with a lot of people saying they're really struggling with sleep and exhaustion, and that feeling of needing that sugar rush of, you know, getting to the afternoon, how am I going to get through to the rest of the day? What can we do to try and manage those feelings?
Very, very common. Yeah, a couple of things. If you are, and I really do mean this, if you are on your knees with symptoms, you've got to get those sorted out before you start trying to manage your weight. To do this, to really start changing your behaviors, to embracing activity, to eating well, you've got to be feeling good. And if you're absolutely struggling with symptoms, get some help. Do not tolerate that. Once you've got your symptoms under control, absolutely, cravings come along for all kinds of reasons. First thing I would do, food diary. Are you eating regularly? If you're going for long periods without eating and you get the munchies, you haven't got hope of beating that. So you need to eat regularly. Another thing you need to look out for is those starchy carbs. Choose really good low glycemic carbs. That's things that will keep your blood sugars under control. So baby new potatoes, grainy breads, basmati rice, grains like couscous, bulgur wheat, quinoa, pasta that's cooked al dente. These are all great choices to help keep your blood sugars stable. But also, occasionally, you know, we all have emotional relationships with food that mean I'm fed up, I want dairy milk, I'm fed up, I want a bag of crisps. Now, to manage some of those, it's really useful sometimes to first of all establish, am I hungry or is this a craving? A craving is something that we know it's a chemical reaction in the brain. We can maintain the craving sensation for only about 6 to 8 minutes. So one thing I always do with cravings is, as soon as it comes along, don't fight it. Don't say, I can't have this, I'm trying to lose weight. Just say, right, I know what this is. Here we go. We're into a craving. I'm going to give this 15 minutes. Start your timer on your phone, get a drink. Let's make sure you're not hungry, not thirsty. And after 15 minutes, see what's going on. Are you still looking for that food or has it passed? More often than not, if it's just a craving, it will have passed. If you're still looking for something, well, if you've got a selection of healthy snacks that you use mid-morning, mid-afternoon, have an extra snack. There's no point trying to resist being genuinely hungry. And great snacks are things that are 2 food groups combined together. So something like a baby bell and some cherry tomatoes, or a couple of oat cakes with some hummus or some peanut butter, maybe a slice of malt loaf with some cream cheese on it. Nothing fancy. These are just ordinary foods, but these are really good combinations that are going to keep you satisfied. So that's what I would do with cravings. Own them, understand what's going on. Occasionally you will find, actually, I'm hungry. And if you're increasing your activity, you will be hungry sometimes, but more often than not, you'll be amazed how easy it is to beat it if you recognize it for what it is. Well, it's just a craving. This will pass in a minute.
Fantastic. I mean, there's been so many questions. I think we're going to need to do this again, aren't we, Deborah?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Sally Leach, for looking after all of the questions. That is such a busy chat box going on right there.
Amazing.
Some fantastic feedback, Nigel. This is the most sensible, logical menopause session I've ever been to, is one that I've just read. So will you come back and talk to us again?
You try and keep me away. No, of course I will. I'm coming back.
Thank you very much, Nigel. And as you say, 25 years of looking after menopausal women. I think there was a few light bulb moments there around what sort of an 85-year-old do you want to be? And there's a lot more you can do to make that decision yourself. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you again, and enjoy the festive season.
Thank you.